I'm Kris Lovejoy, Global Cybersecurity Leader for Technology Consulting at EY, and I'm here to speak with you at Mobile World Congress about 5G. And when 5G rolls out, people are going to be able to do things like stream movies much more smoothly. They're going to upload their videos faster. They're going to connect more devices to the internet than ever before. But at some point, they're also going to be able to take advantage of things like, truly autonomous driving, personalized and location-specific shopping and dining experiences, digital healthcare, smart city services. But there's one more thing worth mentioning: 5G's impact on the hacking landscape. And here's why 5G networks differ so vastly from earlier generations of networking in terms of physical location. Earlier networks' core is where critical functions like metering, authentication, access control actually happened. At the network edge, devices like cars and robots send and receive data via mobile base stations that form the radio access network, also called the RAN. This edge is where RAN equipment connects user devices back to the core network. But in 5G, the separation between core and edge function is really fuzzy. To support high volume and low latency, highly reliable data connections, you have to create a shorter distance between the edge devices and the mobile base stations. This means, just in general, we're going to be shortening that distance for communication. So in 5G networks, some of the functions that were traditionally executed at the core will now be performed in the RAN, and the network core moves closer to the edge. Among other things, that changes the landscape because managing security is much more complicated at the edge. Now, today I am joined by Simone Montozzi, who is the head of security operations portfolio at Nokia, who's going to be discussing some of the security concerns introduced and solved by 5G in a bit more detail. Simone, can you share your perspective on security and privacy, both the pros and cons around 5G?
Absolutely. Thanks, Kris. Thanks for the introduction. Yes, the way I see 5G is clearly from two sides, right? So in terms of security point of view, on one end, we can say that 5G is more secure than previous generation of mobile technologies. This is because the 3GPP standards, they have identified more sophisticated built-in security features in 5G that overcome the weaknesses of legacy technology, 2G, 3G, 4G, and LTE, and so on. So these let's say, new features are between, let's say, unified endpoint authentication framework, and increased subscriber privacy, and enhanced interconnect and roaming security, and also a secure communication protocols for the 5G architecture. For sure, we can say that 5G provides superior inbuilt security features, supporting the preventive part of our customer security architecture. On the other hand, 5G brings several new security implications at the same time. Let me highlight two of them that, Kris, you touched upon before, right? So the first one is clearly the standalone architecture, which is considering the introduction of the real 5G core, which enables something which is really amazing, which is multiple layer of abstraction with slicing capabilities. This is really enable a lot of business agility that have never been seen in the telecom industry. So this network slicing is the ability to create virtual network with different SLAs, but also different security parameters that can be created, that need to be managed, that can enable the real transformation and the real digital transformation of the CSPs, but also of the enterprise, leveraging the 5G networks. What are the implications of the slicing aspect, right? That clearly, these slicing are more vulnerable for DDoS attack by nature. Think about, for example, a public safety slicing, which needs to be highly reliable, but with a limited low capacity, right? So in this case, theoretically, this kind of slices can be exhausted easily by forcing endpoints, right? So and so the DDoS attacks and so on. At the same time, the agility and dynamics of the network slice from a lifecycle standpoint make the compliance and the audit management processes extremely difficult without high degree of automation. The second example I will mention is the edge cloud adoption in 5G, as you said. Besides the generic cloud security implications, such as the east-west traffic visibility, the need of microsegmentation, hypervisor integrity for customer traffic, and data isolation that the edge cloud infrastructure brings, they are bringing further security challenges, right? Think about, as you mentioned before, physical security to protect the data centers that are dispersed in the network, the traffic from and to the data center with an increased network and data security measures in terms of segmentation and encryption, but also the different application and services that will be in the edge. They will imply different security control points, right? So, and the endpoints in industrial IoT environment also will be significantly important and will increase the attack surface. So in summary, what I can say that although 5G is well armed from a powerful inbuilt preventive security mechanisms, the new security challenges it introduces can cause some headache to our customer and especially to our CSO and the security responsible. The possible concern are clearly around the requirement for highly automated 5G production system from security perspective. For example, to handle GRC interdependency in a dynamic changing environment, to adapt the existing security posture in 5G without having the contextual competence. Example, in case of incident management, how to do threat modeling, how to monitor in the 5G environment what's happening in the network, how to interpret the evolving threat landscape in 5G context, how to handle the global shortfall of talented security personnel in the 5G era. So this is something that we are seeing every day because it's more and more difficult to combine network experience with security experience and do the right sourcing of talent globally. But what I just discussed are mainly technical aspects, right? So, but as I mentioned, like in the slicing, in the compliance standpoint, and so on, I haven't touched much about the regulatory environment. How do you see, Kris, the implication from regulation, from compliance, and so on?
Yeah, but and before I even touch on the regulatory complexity, which is a really critical consideration here, I want to just touch on a few points associated, with your discussion, particularly around the endpoints that are connecting to the networks, and on the area of where I think regulation is actually lagging. Let me explain. It is a truism within the security industry that most of our clients are driven to acquire security capability for one of two reasons. One, there's been a crisis that they have to react to, or two, there's a compliance requirement out there that forces them to respond. Not necessarily the greatest reasons to be investing in security, but that's just the reality of where we are. Now, what keeps me up at night is the fact that the smart devices that are connecting to the 5G networks can themselves act as a cyber threat. And essentially, these smart devices have three layers. Think about this as a layer cake where the first layer is a specialized computer chip. This specialized computer chip is usually really inexpensive, very operational, which combines open source software and a bunch of proprietary components and drivers. The second layer is the original device manufacturers layer, the ODMs. These ODMs are hired by a third party, like a medical device manufacturer, to build on specification. The ODM will generally pick the least expensive chip to meet their feature requirements, with minimal engineering to impact their margin. Now, in the third layer, the ODM hands it over to the company behind the branded name on the box, and this third entity tacks on an application. which makes it possible for customers to access via, the features and functions, sort of that application, that technology that's sort of in that box. Now, in this process, there is pretty much no incentive and sometimes very little expertise to be able to really secure any given part within that supply chain. So if you think about it, each of the layers, with the exception primarily of that third layer I described, which is sort of owned by the person whose brand is on the box, the chip layer and the ODM layer, these in of themselves have to be patched. They have to be managed. They have to be authenticated. The provenance of these devices has to be defined. But unfortunately, within this model, at least with those two first layers, none of the parties really has a financial interest to layer on security capabilities. And maintaining these older devices just simply isn't a priority, especially when these devices are selling as little as a few cents each. So it's a perfect storm. You've got old components, some of which are customized, some of which are open source. At least two layers in that layer cake can't be upgraded, they can't be patched, they can't be authenticated, but yet they're trusted. Now, I point this out because as you're connecting these devices to the 5G infrastructure, keep in mind that these are the edge. This is your perimeter, and you have to be considerate about how these particular devices are being used, managed, et cetera. And as I said, because they are largely not covered under any given compliance regime, it is very hard for organizations to sort of understand, let alone go through the process of accepting, sort of those devices, nor do the consumers really understand what it is that they're buying and that they're using. So I do want to say that, as one thinks about 5G, it's really important, if SolarWinds has taught us anything, that security has to extend beyond the four walls of the company. And at the risk of completely oversimplifying, you really need to build trust into the devices and the networks as you're thinking about accepting them. And unfortunately, as I've mentioned before, this isn't how the market works. In fact, according to our latest survey, only 35% of organizations will actually consider security within the context of a new business initiative. So meaning I am somebody who's offering home, sort of a Fitbit or some sort of other home device. I'm not necessarily thinking about how to secure multiple layers of the device that I am acquiring and putting onto the network. So I just want you to, consider that this is an aspect of 5G, maybe a little bit orthogonal, but important nonetheless. Now, going back to sort of the question you asked me, Simone, about regulation, I think what's really important is that over the past 4 to 5 years, we've seen a pretty significant backlash against globalism. A lot of heightened nationalist tendencies, and those nationalist tendencies are actually being instantiated in localized regulation, which guides how data can be collected and shared, what kinds of algorithms, including encryption standards, can be used, what kinds of technologies can be imported and exported. In fact, 66% of nation states on Earth today have introduced new techno-nationalist legislation focused on privacy and security. These regulations are adding enormous amounts of complexity and confusion, which we expect is only going to increase exponentially with the introduction of these smart devices that I just described, which have been built to collect and process, in large part, personally identifiable information. So how does a customer understand? How do they get their arms around this complexity? How do they track and monitor these regulations? How do they understand what kinds of technologies are not permitted or permissible in a particular market? How do they know what kind of data can be collected and exposed? This is a tough problem for clients to get their arms around. And so how do we recommend that clients get their arms around this? Well, we strongly, strongly urge that organizations consider the adoption of a security by design philosophy and approach to thinking about security and privacy inside the smart device stroke 5G networks from the point at which the adoption is being considered, not after you've acquired that device and you're about to put it onto the network. So Simone, I think it would be great if you could talk a little bit about how EY and Nokia have teamed up to help our customers overcome some of the challenges that you described, as well as those that I followed up on.
Yes, absolutely. No, clearly this concern can lead our customer most of the time, right, to involve a partner to help them in their security transformation driven by the 5G era. So that's the reason why Nokia and EY we formed a partnership, right, to fill that role, combining Nokia 5G security competence with EY extensive enterprise IT and OT security capabilities and competence. So together, what we do, we offer what we call managed security services solution that are tailored for the 5G environments. We have basically three pillars of capabilities that we help our customer with. The first one is what we call managed detection and response capability for 5G. That's a bit the core of the proposition, in which we cover the incident management part of the defense in-depth security architecture. So as we mentioned previously, 5G has embedded enhanced security features, but we cannot exclude and we need to manage the likelihood of a successful attack. In fact, additionally, we must expect increased adversary motivation as more and more critical services and applications and devices and IoT items are hosted on 5G infrastructure. In order to quickly detect and respond effectively to this incident in the 5G, we are in need to build up the so-called contextual incident management capabilities. And that's what we do, and for our customer, or we help our customers to set up. Right, so we are interpreting this need and this threat intelligence and this threat hunting and capabilities in the 5G context. And we perform the threat modeling for 5G control, user and management plane, based on what we design as the best 5G monitoring use cases to implement in our security intelligence and operations center. So last but not the least, in managed detection and response capabilities, the ability to really automate the response in the cyber playbooks to filter out the high number of simple and repetitive cases, but focus our analysts on the most critical incident and mission critical incident. The second pillar of our offering, joint offering, is what we call end-to-end security assessment, which is specific for 5G again, right? So what is it? It's a contextual maturity compliance technology and threat-centric assessment in which we really help our customer to get their visibility on what is their security capability, their security posture, and we identify the key gaps. We provide a maturity improvement roadmap to help them achieve the security readiness which is needed for them, both for CSPs and enterprise, clearly. And we can provide also consultative services or managed security operation services at the end or within this exercise. The last aspect of our joint offering is clearly what we call security governance, risk and compliance area, where we really merge the two capabilities of Nokia and EY, and we are able to address the challenges around the enhanced and much more complex security control that are happening for 5G. So the security control architecture adaptation and automation to 5G needs, it's at the center of this offering. For example, like this, design correction of identity and access management controls for network slicing, as an example, right? So that has a huge implication on the way identity and access management needs to be done in a slicing environment. Then we also provide compliance and evidence management automation to follow the 5G production system dynamics, security baseline configuration automation, and so on. Absolutely, we are of course open to get more questions from the attendants on how we can, let's say, customize the offering or the capabilities to target for our customers' specific needs. And I think the best way to explain what we do together is to come with an example and concrete customer case. So let me give the word to you again, Kris, right? So you can take us through a concrete and success story.
Yeah, thank you, Simone. And I think you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, sort of as they say, the proof is in the pudding. And I think one of the best use cases is where we team together to help drive significant network security improvements for an Indian multinational telecommunications services company. In this particular case, the company was really interested in shifting its telecoms production system and enterprise IT environment into a hybrid cloud, which would really, for the business, help supercharge agility and sort of make efficiency so much better. But they realized that kind of move would actually potentially increase their attack surface. So they called on us to really help in improving their active threat attack detection and response capabilities, helping them to demonstrate effective compliance to the various legal and regulatory challenges that I was describing, as well as to ensure security readiness and maturity in a very, very dynamic environment. So how did we help them achieve their goals? Well, it was a pretty simple process of starting with a maturity assessment. So using some capabilities that EY has built internally, where we can benchmark an organization's current state and identify gaps to achievement of the target state, and using a kind of an unparalleled database of the results of tens of thousands of assessments and audits with our clients. And using that assessment, create a strategy plan, as well as a new governance and operations model to help the organization continuously identify risk, monitor and respond across 4G, 2G, broadband, fixed line, and DTH services. Now, some of the tools that we used included ELK, Splunk, QRadar, the EY technologies, Nokia's capabilities, etc. Now, from a benefits perspective, what did the customer receive from working with us? Well, they were able to very quickly and efficiently identify some of the security design and implementation gaps in their networks. They were able to design and implement new security policies and processes per telecom leading practices. They accelerated their threat detection and response capabilities. They were able to recognize threats before they became an issue through the Network Security Operations Center. They were able to take advantage of an integrated security governance, risk, and compliance model by leveraging the Unified Compliance Framework to meet internal and external audit requirements. And then finally, they were able to increase their efficiency and reduce people dependency through use of automation that sort of enabled that security transformation. So together, the organization avoids more than 300 security incidents in the domain per month and has cut compliance and audit management time in half. So taking a step back from this one customer, I am really excited about the EY Nokia Alliance and the power of what we do together in being able to help our customers. And so what I think is, by leveraging and integrating 5G network and mobile technology from Nokia and the EY cybersecurity business transformation capabilities, it's really going to allow customers to enable innovation. This isn't about stopping them from progressing. I think the value of what we're offering is just a way for customers to actually enter into the future in a very trusted way. And this isn't just hype, because together we have a very strong, independently and together we have a strong track record. And this is buoyed by Nokia's deep telecom understanding and EY's proven track record in cyber and privacy transformation using our security and privacy by design philosophy and approach. So now as we come to a close, here's some food for thought. 5G isn't really a revolution. It's kind of the inevitable evolution of networking as we enable more and more connected devices. And that evolution has been taking place in a lot of arenas, transportation, healthcare, just to name a couple, for a long time now. Now, with this network evolution underway, it's time to build trust into the network, specifically into your 5G network and into the devices that connect to 5G, to help your organization in achieving confidence and understanding that's needed to address the sort of these growing challenges, as well as to maximize the opportunities that can come from the adoption of 5G. So Simone, I'd like to turn it over to you to take this to the last leg of the marathon, if you will.
No, thanks, Kris. No, I mean, I was reflecting what you said is perfectly right. So in the end, I think 5G, it's not a revolution, but it's an evolution that needs to be approached across two dimensions, I think. One is horizontal dimension, so the ability to cover endpoints, RAN, transport, cloud core from an end-to-end perspective, but also being able to understand what are the vertical and industry specificities, right? So in terms of supply and value chain, in smart manufacturing, energy grid, or public safety, or others, right? So that you also mentioned many times. And so really EY and Nokia are a very good combination, because really Nokia is well positioned to protect the use case horizontally also, right? So with the deep 5G and in general network competence, and also asset from a security standpoint, while EY is also bringing the vertical competence, the whole supply chain understanding and the use case securitization aspect that are clearly differentiating the partnership and making the partnership a very complementary and successful couple.
Thank you, Simone. And I think just in closing, this is all about enabling innovation. Again, this is not about stopping growth. And we know that, sort of 5G can be sort of a frightening proposition for some, particularly if you pay attention to some of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that's being propagated on the web today. But I do think that there is a huge amount of social and economic value that can be attained through the move to smart devices and 5G more generally. And I think, this is where we're here. Simone and I are both very passionate about the fact that together, we can really help organizations in taking that journey and getting to a successful destination through that journey. So thank you again for listening to us. If you have any questions, please feel free to visit our virtual booth. Feel free to reach out to us. We are more than happy to answer any questions you may have about this presentation, our services, or anything else you are interested in learning. And thank you again, Simone. Thank you, and see you soon.
Thank you.